When God created the universe, He placed the sun for the day and the moon for the night, the birds to fly and the fish to swim. Every creature was given its place and purpose. And so too I believe that no human person is on this planet by accident. Each one of us has a place and a purpose. Abraham had his place and his purpose. Moses had his place and his purpose. David had his place and his purpose. And likewise, each and every one of us has our place and our purpose. This morning we heard a beautiful story in the life of Joseph and his brothers, taken from the book of Genesis. The life of Joseph had so many twists and turns. Nevertheless, all these were directed so that his place and his purpose may be realized in God's big plan of salvation. When the brothers of Joseph sold him, they thought that they were succeeding in their little plan to get rid of him. But they could not defeat God's big plan of salvation. When Pharaoh threw him into the prison, he got Joseph out of his sight, but he could not get Joseph out of God's vision. When Joseph became the steward of Pharaoh's kingdom, Pharaoh thought that he was realizing his smart plan to overcome the famine, which was true. But it was a small move on God's chessboard, whose larger plan was to unite the family of Jacob and to save the future of Israel. Joseph, now united with his brothers, tells them, "Do not be angry. Do not be angry with yourselves for what you did to me in the past. Because you sold me, you ill-treated me, you mistreated me. For God has surely sent me to prepare the way for you and to preserve your life. Had you not sold me, perhaps all of us would have died of famine. And therefore, in God's big chessboard, these were small moves, even though they seemed to be crooked and twisted moves. They had a place on the chessboard of God. And thus we see the reason, the place and the purpose for Joseph and all that happened to him. We have another beautiful example given to us in the life of Queen Esther. You know the story. And her uncle Mordecai sends word to Esther with these words: "Who knows why God has placed you in this place? You, a slave girl, now Queen Esther. Who knows why God has placed you in this place? Perhaps it was for this time and this reason that you are where you are. And therefore, he was telling Esther, find your place and your purpose in God's plan. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5, we read, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you, and I appointed you. Our plans of life begin only after we are born. God's great plan began even before we were conceived in our mother's womb. And therefore, brothers and sisters, we realize that nothing happens to us by accident, particularly when it comes in God's big plan. For every page in the book has its place, its purpose, and every star in the sky has its reason for being there. And therefore, each one of us, looking at the life of Joseph, looking at the life of Queen Esther, understanding the words from the prophet Jeremiah, need to remind ourselves that we too have a place, a purpose, and a reason in God's big book of life.